Welcome to Event Explorer, the podcast that takes you behind the curtain of the world's most extraordinary events. I'm your host, Daniel Roth. Today, we're diving into our second episode focused on Burning Man. In our first episode, we explored the history and fan experience of this one-of-a-kind event, and now we're lucky enough to hear about the operations behind it from a person whose job it is to manage this temporary, art-inspired city in the desert. Burning Man's impact extends far beyond the Nevada desert. It's a movement as much as an event. From 49 regional events in the U.S. to 24 more in 17 countries worldwide, Burning Man fosters a global network of creators, participants, and changemakers. But it all culminates in Black Rock City, the largest Leave No Trace event in the world, where 75,000 citizens come together to build a temporary metropolis of creativity and connection. Building Black Rock City is an immense undertaking. In 2022 alone, it took 18 people 7 days to lay out the city grid, with over 6,000 flags, and 200 volunteers to install the trash fence, battling a massive dust storm along the way. The infrastructure includes over 1,700 porta potties, 624 mutant vehicles on the playa, and a municipal airport that saw over 3,000 takeoffs and landings. What a huge undertaking. And to tell us about it is Charlie Dolman, Burning Man's Event Operations Director. Charlie oversees the intricate system that makes Black Rock City possible, from safety and sustainability to managing a team of thousands. He'll take us through the logistics, challenges, and innovations that turn this blank canvas of Black Rock Desert into a vibrant, temporary city. But before we get started, we'd love to hear from you. What events or topics would you like us to explore in future episodes? Follow us on Instagram at Event Explorer Podcast, or leave a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And if you've been to Burning Man, we'd especially love to hear your insights and experiences. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, let's dive in with Charlie Dolman to uncover the operations behind Burning Man. All right. Behind every world-class event is a leader who brings together creativity, logistics, and community. And at Burning Man, that leader is Charlie Dolman. As Event Operations Director, Charlie oversees the intricate web of infrastructure, safety, sustainability, all these elements that transform a barren desert into Black Rock City, a space where 80,000 participants plus come together to create, connect, and celebrate. And today, he's here with us to show how his team navigates these challenges, producing one of the most iconic events in the world, and what lessons other event organizers and fans can take from Burning Man's evolution. All right, let's dive in. Charlie Dolman, welcome to Event Explorer.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you too. I'm just in awe of the scale at which you work. I think it's just so cool, and it's this literal ground up build. It is a bit of this mystery, about how it all comes together. And I think until people experience it themselves, they can't even understand it. To that point, when did you first hear about Burning Man and what it is?
I first heard about Burning Man in 1999. There was a big solar eclipse that went across Europe, much like the big American eclipse that hit in 2024. It was the big one in Europe. And so I went with a bunch of other, shall we say, festival heads to a big event in Hungary. And whilst there, obviously met a lot of people. There were people from like 40 different countries all around the world. And I just heard about this thing called Burning Man. And so we just started talking about it. And then I looked it up on the very 90s website that was there then, with all the lots and lots and lots of text. And that was it. I just remember reading about it and just thinking, oh my God, wow, this is what you can do. This is a whole different way about thinking about events.
And you had been thinking about events beforehand. Were you already, I know that you did some massive work in the UK, really cool stuff. Secret Garden Party, Wilderness Festival, Love Box. I mean, just some awesome, unique festivals. Were you already in the industry when you heard about Burning Man this way?
Well, 1999, I was just leaving college.
Okay.
So I was just finishing a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology. I'd been running a nightclub while I was there. We bring DJs in from around the world, and we would only get about 1,000 people. So it was a big club, but not a major event. So that was my only experience at that particular time.
When did you get into festivals from this club work?
Right. So the event in Hungary was a pretty profound experience. You know, combining a solar eclipse with all of those people from around the world was pretty monumental. And the guy who ran it was a guy called William Shakespeare.
Wait a minute.
Otherwise, yes, exactly. Affectionately known as Fish or Coconut. And he, after 99, he said, I'm going to do another one in Zambia in 2001. There was a solar eclipse on June the 22nd in Zambia in 2001. So I basically pestered him. I was a young kid out of college and I just pestered him and pestered him and pestered him and pestered him. And eventually he was like, okay, come help. Nice. So I moved to Berlin and I spent 2 years in Berlin helping figure out how to get 15,000 hippies to the middle of the desert in Zambia.
And it worked?
It did work. I mean, it was a baptism of fire. Let's just say that. And there was a whole pile of stories that came out of it, but it did work.
Incredible.
People came and we saw an eclipse and it was great.
Wow. And so would you say the spirit of that event is kind of got you hooked on this? I mean, you didn't know it at the time, but this kind of burner, make a festival out of nothing kind of feel, and this kind of transformative experience creation aspect of a festival? I think I really started to love organizing events during the parties at college. I mean, we did free parties, we did nightclub parties, we ran all kinds of things for fun. We never really made any money from it. And sometimes we even lost money from it. But, you know, I think it's kind of started before that, but those kind of early festivals really, really cemented things. I see. So when was the trip? When was the first trip to Black Rock City? How did that come about? First trip to Black Rock City was 2006. I was a young guy. I don't remember how old I was, but like 30 something, early 30s, late 20s. And obviously it cost a lot of money to go to Black Rock City, and I did not have a lot of money at the time. But I was working for a fantastic experiential marketing company in London called RPM Limited. If you need brand work, look them up. They're great. Mm-hmm. And the guys who run it, it's a family business, had a fund that if you were going to go do something creative and exciting that, you know, maybe could come back and provide some inspiration to some of the creative work that this agency did, they would give you some money. And so my first trip to Black Rock City was funded by my job, who the founders kind of were like, we really want to go, but we have kids. So we're just going to go vicariously through you right now. Very cool. And go have fun. What was that experience like? Was it, did you know what you were getting into? I mean, you had some experience in Zambia and such of venturing off into the wilds, but. I had no idea what I was letting myself get into. And it kind of blew my mind and changed the course of my life. Yeah. So incredible. It was everything it was cracked up to be and a whole lot more. Did you meet organizers and people behind the festival while you were there, or were you able to kind of go as just experiencing it? I got to tell you, it's kind of wild being one of the leads at the moment right now, because for my entire time going as a participant with between 2006 and 2012, roughly, I didn't interact with any Burning Man staff at all. I mean, I gave a ticket at the gate and someone from placement told me where to camp or showed me the spot that we'd been allocated. But other than that, I didn't interact with any Burning Man staff ever. And I got to say, that's a pretty incredible, made for a pretty incredible experience, because you feel completely free. You've no idea that there's this whole system. You're just like, I'm just going camping in the desert with my buddies and we're going to set up a thing, and it's completely free. And that's actually a beautiful thing. That's a super unique aspect of Burning Man. You get your passport, right, when you sign up, and that could be, besides the gate, your only interaction with someone on your team, which is a team of thousands of people. It's a team of thousands of people. Okay, so where do we make the jump? Where do we become involved? So, you know, my UK festival thing, there was some secret garden party, as you said, wilderness. We did arenas at different events. We produced brand experiences. We did, you know, all kinds of different things. And then in 2012, Burning Man project was in the process of transforming from an LLC, the old kind of business structure, into a nonprofit. And the founders were recognizing that was going to take a lot of their work. So they advertised for an operations director, somebody to come and essentially hold the reins
for them and with them while giving them more time to focus on the nonprofit. So they advertised, and a bunch of people sent it to me and were like, "Hey, you should have a look at this." And at the time, I thought, "Oh, they know who this person is. Like, this is a family. They know who exactly. Like, they're advertising because they got to. Like you're required to advertise, whatever." But I got the job, which was a surprise.
So what was the organization? So that's what, about just over a decade ago?
10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, 10 or 12 years ago. And what was the organization like? So this was a bit of a growing up moment for Burning Man. When you came on, it became a little bit more official. I don't know what the term. I mean, it had been going for a while. What did this new kind of team and breath of new energy kind of do to the festival? How did it transform with your and your team coming on?
I think over the whole journey of Burning Man, it has slowly become more professional. And I'm not sure professional is quite the right word, but more just like an improved production. And so, that's just a constant cycle of trying something, it not working, you try something new. And, I think as the organization and the event got more mature, the organization was able to, appeal more broadly and hire people with very specific skills and bring them in to do specific things. So I think that, in the last decade, the whole level of professionalism of the organization has kind of just been slowly kind of ratcheting up, which is great because it it means that you then have better experiences for the staff, better experiences for the community. You have, you're able to manage government compliance. So you filled out the paperwork for, this is going to be my gig in the US is running this crazy place. So now you build a team. What did that team look like initially? What did the structure need to be in order to make Burning Man happen? Well, that was so what did the structure need to be in order to make Burning Man happen? That was my first big surprise. So your conventional event model, which most people who produce events will recognize, is a relatively small production team, and you put together a plan, and then you turn that into bids, and you get to different contractors or vendors to do different functions for you. You'll have a stage crew, you'll have a site crew, a power crew, the guys that do the tents, right? The guys that do the feeding of people and the potties, all that kind of stuff. We do most of that ourselves. Okay. So we have some big contracts for things like potties and commissary that are very specialist skills that, you need specialist equipment. But things like all the medical services, all the gate services, the security services, we do all of that ourselves. Yeah. So the first thing that I learned was that, coming to Burning Man was that we do a lot of things ourselves. That's why it takes between 10 and 12, however 1,000 people to staff the event. We have the same functions as other events. So we have security and safety. We have event access. We have the art department. We don't have a technical production team because we don't produce any stages. So there's nothing along those lines. We don't book any musical talents. So that's very different. But what we do have that's different, that's also different, is a big kind of participant interaction. So Burning Man is participatory. You bring a thing to gift to the community, and that big, the image that you see in the photos of the C shape, the kind of horseshoe shape in the desert, all that stuff that you're looking at is things that people have bought to the event. We don't doesn't own that stuff. We own a little bit of it, but like 95% of it, 97% of it is things that people bring. So, and that's part of their offering. And, the idea is if everybody brings something, then collectively there's a whole pile of stuff and it's a fun experience. So what we do have is we have teams of humans that facilitate that work, right? So to actually have 1,500 different community groups come together and map it out, right? And that takes a whole team of people. So people send us applications. They want to come run a camp to be a yoga studio or to be a music stage. Like we have to map all of that out. And that takes people. Same with art. When we have hundreds of artists come and build art, to support those artists with heavy equipment and with determining out where they go, and then with holding them accountable for cleaning up afterwards, all that kind of stuff takes all teams of people. So we have this whole kind of community-facing group of humans that just facilitate and enable the participants to come and do their thing. And that's quite distinct from the infrastructure services, which most event organizers would know and understand.
Sure. So now, we're a number of months out from Burning Man 2025. What's the core team now in Black Rock City? Is the team based out near in Nevada, or you guys come back to the city to kind of plan?
So yeah, we have a work ranch up in Nevada where we store the assets that we own. So there's people up there year round who just, they maintain buildings and they maintain trailers for living in and vehicles and all that kind of stuff and offices. But the most of us live either in Reno or San Francisco. And we have 2 offices there. A year-round team, there's like 150 of us roughly that do all of this work. As you can imagine, we have a bunch of lawyers. We have a financial team. We have an HR team, because when you scale up to 10, 12,000 people, you need a whole HR team to take care of that. We have a communications team, and, as well as kind of business operations. And then we have the event operations. So it's these different groups kind of work together. And this time of year is budget time. So we're not only trying to wrap up last year, but also financially planning for the future year.
So there's a sense of what this group is doing is curation into operation, right? That how do you maintain as an organization, and as well as I'm sure there's a lot you don't, that sounds crazy, but you don't want to say no. There's a lot of we'll make it work. How do you curate those things and make sure that it's all going to kind of come together over the year?
I think curation's, so when it comes to participant experiences, I think curation is a strong word.
Okay.
We very rarely say no to something. We try to find a way to say yes. So if someone walks in the door and they've got an idea that is just out and out dangerous, what is necessary to make that idea manageable, right? How do we, yes, you've got a platform, it's 200 feet off the ground and it's only 2 foot by 2 foot and it doesn't have any handrails. Well, right. So, there are conversations that we can have that will help people bring because remember, a lot of these participants, they're just normal people. They don't do events in the real world. It's a bunch of guys or a family, a community, and they had an idea and they want to bring it to life. And that's awesome. And they figure out how to build it and they figure out where to get the money from, but maybe they don't know about health and safety and event, so we help them with that. But in terms of the infrastructure, we have a leadership that the operational leadership is about 8 of us. There's a guy who oversees infrastructure, someone who oversees the art, somebody who does the community interaction, health and safety, security. So there's and those leaders work together centrally year round. And then underneath each of those people is a management structure. And as you get towards the event, the number of humans inside that management structure increases. So each department has maybe 1 person full-time, and then maybe 6 people who would come on for a 6-month period in the run-up to the event. Okay. And then in the weeks before the event, that number increases as the teams bring their logistics team to put up their first aid stations or their, the infrastructure out at the gate, or, and then during the event, when it comes to operating those things, that's when the big numbers come in.
Gotcha. The thousands of crew and hands that are helping out. Some of these structures or even moving vehicles are engineering marvels. I mean, we're not talking about a tent, that gets its toes in the ground and you're good. What have been some of the more impressive, things that you've been a part of in these 10 years that you kind of you're just amazed kind of by what people bring?
Well, first of all, I got to say that the production engine of Behind the City is one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen in my life. Like that, the production operation of the event is just incredibly rock solid. In terms of the things that the participants bring, like we don't have an awful lot to do with that.
Sure.
Like I said, we have some safety conversations and we help with heavy equipment because it doesn't make sense for everybody to bring their own, VR telehandler. Like we have a fleet of stuff. But some of the things that people bring are just totally mind blowing. One of the projects that's maybe very most well known is the temple. So the temple is kind of like the spiritual heart of the city, for want of a better way of putting it. And it is a community-run project. So community members submit proposals. They want to come build a temple. And then they build what is best described as the cathedral from Black Rock City. So some of these structures are really quite large, and it takes hundreds of people and about 8 months for this whole project to come together, not to mention hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it becomes just this huge community effort where people dedicate their evenings and their weekends coming and just building, individual parts of this larger whole. And a community member artist has taken on pulling all of these components together, the budgeting and the fundraising and the designing and the engineering and the mechanics and the volunteer management, and then taking care of all these people, getting them to the site, having them all build together for 6 weeks and then burning it. It's a pretty incredible thing to kind of really comprehend the scale of what it takes to build something like that. Your viewers can go just look on the internet at the Burning Man Temple to get some examples of what this is.
In the ephemerality of it, that it comes and goes. It's meant to only be enjoyed, there and in person. I mean, that's at looking so deeply at events. Many of this particular model is so ripe with generosity, kind of, that the people behind all this work are giving it away. And, even to that point of Black Rock City and your team being not for profit, not even, fundraising for ourselves. It really is. What we learned is that the money that the festival itself generates go back to these artists to help them, support them. And now, you have an artistic movement that's being generated out of this. What do you think that there's room for more types of festivals in this way? Do you see kind of the movement growing and this becoming a model for different kinds of events?
I mean, I do. It's hard. So one of the principles of Burning Man, which were, by the way, written by the founder in the early 90s, and they weren't written as prescriptive devices. Larry just kind of was like, well, what's happening here? Because people were going, like you said, back to their home towns and wherever they came from, and they wanted to replicate this experience in their own way. And so they were writing in like, what's the magic sauce? And Larry wrote these principles to describe what humans were doing on the ground. And people take those away. And so now there are, I don't know, 80 to 100 regional events around the world. And these are events run along similar kind of volunteer and participatory, models. And they're community members who have just decided to do their thing, and there's all kinds of different versions that are happening. The biggest one is in Israel called Midburn, and they get about 15,000 people. And there's a big one down in South Africa called Africa Burn. But some of them are just a couple of hundred people. But the thing that they have in common is that this idea of gifting, like you mentioned, everybody's there just to give what they bring to the event. And that it's all about, just as well as the giving, it's all about the participating, and everybody comes and just engages, be it engaging activity or volunteering time to do the essential services of the event, or bringing your own contribution. Yes, you can go and appreciate someone else's interactivity. If they've bought a giant twister board, someone's going to go play twister, but also you could be the person bringing the twister board.
For someone, your first time was almost, we're going to be coming on a 20-year anniversary, not to date ourselves. People discover Burning Man every year. I think it's almost like, especially on the West Coast thing, this rite of passage or this coming of age for a certain type of person that hears the call and must come. to be a good citizen and to be able to participate in a way that treats the experience with respect, what should a newbie, come to the festival with, or how should they approach Burning Man in your thoughts?
So in recent years, people have started to think about, you need to come as part of a group, you need to come as part of a camp. So then you're kind of coming and you're bringing a bigger offering. I love that for them. Like, it's a great way to build community. But I also think that you don't, humans' imagination tends to want to make things bigger and better and just kind of really build on stuff. But I also want to just celebrate the small. Like, if you and your 5 buddies want to come camping at Burning Man and you rent an RV between you, or you just come in a car and bring a tent, you can bring a thing to share. Like, you could dream up a little activity that you wanted to do with your friends that didn't take an awful lot and wasn't very complicated or even expensive, and bring that. So while there's sometimes this perception, oh, these really grand things, there's also some really awesome, cool, smaller stuff. And it's not just about how much resources you can invest to kind of bring that experience. So I encourage anybody of any stripe to and means to kind of come and try out the event. It really is. There is a lot more diversity in terms of backgrounds of human beings at the event than media would let you believe. Shockingly, media is really into clickbait, and you know what? Pretty girls and parties are really great clickbait. Well, that is there, of course, but it's also like 5% of the entire event. There is a significant level. Did you know there's a rock camp where you can just go and paint rocks? There's a math camp where it's just a safe space to go and do math and geek out with other nerds. Like, there's all kinds of things there for all kinds of humans.
There's a big performance culture too, right? There's what you're saying, kind of and I am interested. I'd love to hear more about the production arm, how they're supporting. Is there a master schedule in any way? Is there a way to know when you're going to see something? And B, how does that team of 1,000 production support? Oh my gosh, I just love the idea of like 1,000 stage managers from college, coming out and rocking like tool belt radio, ready. Right. These are, in my world, these are like God, golden gods, or at least like, this is the army I want to be a part of. How does that work to support art? Like, how does Burning Man work to support art and support performance in that way?
Well, I think the first thing here is that Burning Man is like one of the biggest project management schools ever. Nice. Because the vast majority of people bringing something are not professional. For sure, you do get like, I was an event guy. I would bring event stuff. For me, it was a busman's holiday. I would just do my job for fun, for free in the desert. But a lot of people, they're just folks from home bringing a thing. And I love that for them. How do we support them? Well, we provide a lot of equipment for them. But I think in what the big piece you referred to is, if you want to bring a camp, we have a guide called the What, Where, When, what's happening, where is happening, and when is happening. And if you are a registered piece, a camp or something, and you don't have to be, you can just come camp and don't tell us, and we won't even know who you are or that you're there. You just come to your thing. But if you want to, you can register, and then we'll figure out, like, if you're a grown-up activity, we'll put you with the grown-up. If you're noisy, we'll put you with the noisy. If you're into family stuff, we'll put you with the family people. Like, we zone the city thoughtfully so that people's have good experiences. And then if you are listed, we will gather all of your event information and put it in a catalog, a little program. So there is a program. I don't think anyone makes any guarantees that the events are going to happen when they say they're going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, we get like 8,000 submissions of things happening, and we list about 4,000 of them because it's just otherwise the book would be too big. And yeah, mostly things happen on time. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you find something that you never even knew you wanted to be there in the first place. It's great.
What surprises you? Now, I'm sure you must be surprised by things you see or get to experience. What's like in 2024? What was there anything surprising or something that stood out as novel even after all these years?
In
Or is it an
2024, what
enjoyment
stood
of
out as
tradition?
novel? Yeah, I mean, so in 2023, it rains. And I'm not going to speak about 2024, I'm going to speak about 2023 too. You talk about something novel. So
Mudman.
it's Mudman, right? And so the playa bed is actually an old lake bed. And so it's a kind of clay. So when it gets wet, like in mud, you can squelch around. In this particular, and I believe me, a British festival guy, I squelched around a lot of mud. So I'm down with mud. But this stuff, it just cakes you, cakes under your shoes. So you kind of go, and within about 6 steps, you've got, a foot of mud underneath, a foot of clay underneath your thing. So moving around gets really hard pretty quickly. And so the thing that struck me was all of the micro communities. So people normally play all over the playa and they're out and about visiting all the things. But when they couldn't, all these individual pockets of humans kind of made friends with each other. Because we placed people next to each other. One year you could be camped next to Bill, and the next year you might be camped next to Ted. Like, it changes all the time. So people were making friends with a lot of new people in a lot of immediately smaller social circumstances than they used to. And it just was really, and they were helping each other all over the place. People were like, I'd run out of this, and their neighbors would provide that. And it was a really great human moment to see human kindness really being the prevailing and dominating kind of feeling in the thing, Like, I think we all believe that about the community that the event serves.
Yeah.
But to see it like really happening there, just everywhere you looked, it was a really beautiful thing.
Very cool. And something you couldn't necessarily predict, especially, you didn't want to predict, but I'm sure you make accommodations for nature as it is a harsh environment, whether dry or wet. Let's just talk about the future. Your thoughts. You're at the helm of something you probably, when you first visited, never thought would happen. Do you want, how do you plan to make an impact, or do you make an impact, or what do you feel change? Not that it needs to change, but what do you hope to contribute? Let's just say, as you continue your time at Burning Man, as Burning Man kind of continues to mature.
So for me, I think the thing that's important is, I'm getting older. Like, I'm nearly 50 now, and I want to see the impact that Black Rock City can have on a person be successfully passed off to new generations. So the average age of the burner is like 35, 36, 37, something like that. It's like a lot older than most traditional festivals because it's difficult. It takes time. It takes money. Like, it's a whole, it's different situation. But I want to see that. I want to see that stay. And it is staying, but I want to make sure that we really are opening up the world to the younger generation, right? So people are just viewing the world differently. Social media is now a thing, like just all these kind of tropes and stories that you hear about, like how technology is taking people's lives, how IRL is kind of less of a thing. People are just kind of retreating into not only away from the real world, but also into their own little pockets. Like, we're just getting more and more siloed. And I want to see Burning Man embrace the new generation and to create ways for these people to come in to live more diverse, inclusive, open experiences than maybe they find in other parts of the world. The other thing is, we are really kind of working hard on our sustainability goals. It's a challenge. Like with any event, you have the issues of transport. So, whether you're Coachella or Glastonbury, you've got people coming from many different places to it. And so there's some inherent kind of sustainability issues with that. But we're working really hard inside the organization to do what we can for our operation and trying to lead the community through their what they can do as well to make the event more, to make it more green. So, for example, we have reduced our carbon fuel consumption the fuel that we use to run the infrastructure. We've reduced it by somewhere between 50 and 60% in the last 3 years. Incredible. And so that's a really big deal. We're now running with batteries and renewable fuels, and yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that statistic alone, I mean, with 80,000 people coming in for a week, and the idea that, it's a clean desert, you return it to nature, every year, and then that is a core responsibility and promise kind of that Burning Man and your group is making, and the people that are attendees as well. I think even that probably pervades into that in talking to people that have been to Burning Man, and the idea that they stay that extra day and pick up every last stitch of, when you get home, you start to notice the effect you have on the environment as well. So that's a huge lesson. And that Burning Man and your team would make such a public kind of stance about it and admit, hey, we have to fuel things. We have to make things to make this happen. It has a positive effect on humanity, but we're going to turn that around and make its best effect on our planet as we can. I mean, it's a noble goal. And I think, obviously you're doing a great job of it. Well, the passion comes through in your voice and the love for the work that you do. So just so much respect to you and your team. I thank you for joining. And the idea of exploring an event. I think today we really have got that behind the scenes view. So thank you, and I think this is a great record of some amazing work that 80,000 people come to, and 4,000 or 5,000 people help put on, many of them volunteers. So cool. Just so cool. So, all right, when I come out, I'm going to need to bring my radio and my work gloves and help out on the playa there.
There are plenty of things that we can put your hands and your brain.
I love it. Well, I'm going to bring all the event explorers with me. So we'll have a whole crew ready to do it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. Looking forward to hearing more and seeing what 2025 brings for you and your entire team.
Likewise.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Event Explorer. A huge thank you to Charlie Dolman and the team at Burning Man for giving us an inside look into the operational brilliance and creative magic behind Burning Man. It's incredible to see how logistics, sustainability, and a spirit of community come together to create something so transformative. Have you ever been to Burning Man? We'd love to hear about your experience. Share your thoughts with us on Instagram at Event Explorer Podcast or in the comments section wherever you're listening in. And don't forget, let us know about what events and event subjects you'd like us to explore next. If you've enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn for updates and behind-the-scenes content. Join us next time as we explore another incredible event and meet the visionaries who bring it to life. Until then, I'm Daniel Roth. Happy exploring.